The command rail trembled beneath my palm before the alarms found their voice. A second later, the bitter-orange resin beneath the manual transit guard cracked, and its sharp scent spread through hollow meridian control. I kept my hand where it was. The control room had been built for freight, not war. The walls were low and white, the displays broad enough for civilian traffic crews, the seats adjustable for workers who might spend 14 hours shepherding ore trains and colony transports across the meridian. On most days, the loudest sounds were cooling fans, route bells, and somebody complaining about reheated coffee. That morning, 53 red signatures were closing on our border. "First Spear is maintaining formation," Talon said from the tracking pit. His fingers moved over the local board. "No weapons discharge, no deviation." "That is not reassuring," I said. "No." The Zhyr Ascendancy had sent exactly what its message claimed it would send, its greatest operational fleet. First Spear had burned across 3 systems in parade-perfect order, announcing itself on military channels as if the broadcast were part of the weapon. Heavy carriers in the center, long-hulled strike ships on the flanks, escorts riding staggered above and below the plane. Every vessel throwing out identification, command pulses, combat telemetry, targeting sweeps, and internal synchronization traffic. They were loud enough to sound invincible. Human space, by comparison, looked empty. That was the part they had misunderstood. A freight tug named Morning Psalm crossed the hollow meridian shortly before First Spear reached it. The tug was hauling water processing membranes to a mining habitat, and its captain had filed the wrong approach vector. I felt the route correction through the rail. A soft pressure ran left to right under my palm, like a heavy train moving beneath a floor several levels down. The Morning Psalm vanished from one position marker and appeared on another 40,000 kilometers away without firing its main drive. Talon glanced at me. "Automatic correction." On the military overlay, the Zhyr formation did not react. Their scan saw a civilian tug moving through empty space. They had no reason to care how. An honorary navigation observer aboard First Spear apparently did. Her request came across the open channel 30 seconds later. "Human control. Confirmed civilian vessel translated without visible acceleration." I keyed my microphone. "Confirmed." A deeper Zhyr voice cut across hers. "Observer, remain within assigned channel." Admiral Goranzai. We had his voice print, command record, and public speeches. He had broken the Selene blockade years earlier and ended a border mutiny without losing a capital ship. He was not stupid. That mattered. Stupid enemies were easy to dismiss. Competent enemies carrying the wrong model were dangerous. Goran addressed us. "Terran Transit Guard, this is First Spear of the Zhyr Ascendancy. We are entering the hollow meridian for strategic inspection. Do not interfere." I read the response already authorized by Earth Transit Authority. "First Spear, your formation is armed and has no transit clearance. Hold outside the meridian. Submit route, mass, drive state, and declared purpose. You will be assigned a safe corridor." There was a pause. Then Goran laughed once without humor. "Your border has no defensive fleet." Talon looked at me. I answered, "That does not alter the route requirement. You mistake procedure for sovereignty. I'm giving you the procedure that keeps ships alive." "Your warning is noted." The red formation kept coming. I slid my thumb under the physical safety lip around the manual transit guard. The resin ampule had already broken when the system recognized an unauthorized mass approach. Its bitter orange smell was unpleasant by design. Operators were supposed to remember emergency actions with more than their eyes. The rail trembled again. First Spear reached the outer threshold. "Last warning," I said. "Hold position." Goran's reply was calm. "Proceed." The first ship crossed. Its signal disappeared. No flash, no detonation, no sudden radiation spike. One moment, an escort-designated spear hearth occupied a precise point on Talon's board. The next moment, the marker was gone. The formation behind it accelerated. "Second crossing," Talon said. Another signal vanished. Then a third. The Zhyr channels erupted. Hearth respond. "Control, I have lost Spearash." Flag, confirm interference. Telemetry collapse across lower screen. The voices overlapped so quickly that individual words became noise. I pressed the manual transit guard. The rail kicked once beneath my palm. The control room fans rose in pitch. More signals disappeared. Then another cluster. Then the board seemed to empty. The Zhyr tactical network flooded itself with demands for position updates. Ships still outside the meridian tried to reacquire vessels that, from their perspective, had vanished from reality. They fired search radar, they swept infrared, they tightened formation. They found nothing. Goran came back on the open channel. "Human control, cease electronic attack." "We are not conducting an electronic attack." "Return my ships to my network." "Hold your remaining vessels outside the boundary." "Your jamming is an act of war." "Admiral, the ships that crossed are alive." Silence. Not total silence. I could still hear the clipped Zhyr traffic behind his channel, and the cooling fans above me, and the little click of Talon's stylus against his console. But Goran stopped speaking. Talon pointed at the board. The remaining first spear ships were breaking. The remaining red signature still sat outside the meridian. Most had crossed. Every ship that crossed had gone quiet. "Outer group has stopped," he said. "Good. Do we stop intake?" "System already has. They're holding." He knew that. He asked because his hands were shaking and mine were not. I had worked the meridian for 9 years. I had watched it catch drunk prospectors, failed cargo drives, navigation software loops, and one colony arc that tried to enter with an engine core far hotter than declared. The mesh had never cared whether a ship was embarrassed. It only cared whether the route was safe. Goran's voice returned. "Provide evidence of life." "That can be arranged." "You will restore direct communication." "No." A hard edge entered his tone. "You refuse." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you are still attempting an unauthorized armed entry. We will confirm crew safety. We will not rebuild your combat network for you." Talon glanced over. That was almost rude. "I'm improving." He hid a smile. "Atmospheric pressure, reactor temperature, medical emergency bands, hull integrity, all green except one escort reporting an overheated maneuvering manifold." I transmitted a limited status package. "Every vessel that crossed is inside a controlled transit hold. Life support stable. No hull breach. No human weapons have fired." Goran said, "There are no such positions on our charts." "That is true." "Then where are they?" "In the meridian." "They are not." I rested both hands on the rail. "Admiral, they are not where you expected them to be." The honorary observer spoke before he could stop her. "The civilian tug." Goran snapped, "Explain." Her voice was softer than his, but steady. "Before entry, a human freight vessel changed location without drive acceleration. I asked control to confirm. They did." A pause. She continued. "We assumed local routing." "It was local routing," I said. Goran ignored me. "Observer, are you suggesting civilian infrastructure displaced my warships?" "I am suggesting we failed to identify the infrastructure." That was the first crack. It did not sound dramatic. No one gasped. No alarms changed color. No human officer announced that the great Zhyr fleet had been defeated. A competent navigator had simply replaced one sentence in her head with another. I knew from experience that this was how dangerous ideas died. Slowly, then all at once, Goran ordered the ships outside the boundary to widen formation. Their sensors fanned across the meridian in a disciplined search. The search should have found something. The mesh had no cloak. It had no emitter field. It did not erase ships. It separated root volumes. Hollow meridian sat where several stable transit geometries overlapped. Centuries earlier, human commerce had nearly turned that advantage into a graveyard. Two cargo vessels could approach the same apparent coordinates while occupying different phase-stable transit lanes. Early traffic authorities had solved the problem by building a mesh that assigned volumes before ships committed to the crossing. Every human pilot learned the simplified version. Space could contain more than one safe road through the same apparent place. The military implication had never been the point. That was why it worked so well. Goran believed borders were held by guns because every empire he knew had built borders around guns. Humans had built this one around traffic. Attempt active ranging, he ordered. The Zhyr outside ships fired synchronized pulses. The pulses crossed empty kilometers, reflected from ordinary dust and returned. Nothing. Attempt gravitic trace. Again, nothing useful. The holds were not far away in some hidden pocket universe. They were locally adjacent root states that the Zhyr instrumentation flattened into one geometry because their navigation model assumed one operational volume per coordinate set. I did not explain that. Not yet. Talon opened a private channel. Earth wants status. Send them the safety package. And tactical. There isn't one. He looked at the board. Enemy warships have disappeared. They are not disappeared to us. I know. Then don't write disappeared. What do I write? Held. He typed it. Outside, First Spear tried something smarter. Goran sent a destroyer forward alone. Human control, he said. You will not interfere with Spear Lance. You still have no route authorization. It is a single vessel. That does not make it authorized. It will enter under passive sensors. That does not change the requirement. Proceed, Lance. The destroyer crossed. Its signal vanished. This time, Goran had his instruments focused on the event. The result was worse for him. The ship did not blur, flare, or dissolve. One sensor solution ended. There was no transitional track to follow because his fleet was observing from outside the root geometry that accepted the vessel. The Onari observer said quietly, there was no transmission loss before positional loss. Goran did not answer. She said if this were jamming, position should remain derivable. Still no answer. He could hear the same conclusion I could. His fleet was not losing the ability to talk to ships in front of it. It was losing access to the place where those ships had gone. Goran shifted tactics again. Human control, release Spear Lance. Withdraw your remaining vessels to the warning line. If I comply, will you release it? Yes. His remaining ships reversed. Not far, only to the line we had marked. But they moved. Talon exhaled, first compliance. Log it. When the last red marker crossed back beyond the warning line, I touched the route selector. The rail pressed upward against my palm. A new tone sounded. Moments later, Spear Lance reappeared at a safe distance outside the meridian. Its engines were at idle. Its hull was intact. Its communications came back in a burst. Flag, this is Lance. We were held, repeat held. No hostile contact, no weapons impact. Navigation would not accept thrust outside local safety envelope. Goran said, "What restrained you?" "Unknown." Helm reported valid drive response, but every attempted vector resolved into holding track. We had full internal communications. External fleet net absent. Did humans board? No. Scan. No detectable active scan beyond safety pings. Threat. A pause. None presented. Goran had been given what he requested, evidence direct from his own crew. It did not help him. He said to me, "Release the others. Withdraw first spear from approach posture. We are beyond your line. Your weapons remain aligned toward human space." A long pause. Then icons on our board changed. Targeting radars went cold. Missile doors closed. Heavy spinal arrays rotated away from the boundary. Not surrender. Not yet. But the shape of the encounter changed. The wrong model had required visible guns on both sides. Now, the Zhyr were turning their guns away from an enemy that had not shown any. That mattered. I released another pair of ships. Not all. Goran noticed. You are negotiating with my crews as leverage. No. Then why two? Because I need to know you understand that compliance changes access. You are teaching me. I am keeping traffic predictable. His answer came after several seconds. You make war sound like traffic management. This is traffic management. Talon coughed into his hand to hide another smile. The honorary observer did not. She asked Commander Beckett, "What is the purpose of the system that holds our ships?" "Collision prevention, hazard containment, route assignment, emergency recovery." "And fleet interdiction." "Not its original purpose." Goran broke in. "You expect me to believe this is civilian infrastructure. I expect you to believe your own sensors." That was the closest I came to swagger. I regretted it immediately, mostly because Talon looked delighted. The next hours were less dramatic and more important. We checked every isolated ship. We transmitted life support summaries. We allowed medical ban messages between held vessels and the Zhyr flagship, but only one at a time. We denied tactical synchronization. Goran stopped accusing us of jamming. Instead, he asked technical questions. How long could the holds last? As long as needed for safe route resolution. Could a ship damage the holding geometry by firing weapons? Possibly itself, not the mesh. Could multiple ships be placed together? Yes. Could we choose which ones? Yes. Could we return them to different exits? Yes. That answer bought several seconds of silence. Then Goran asked, "Different exits how far apart?" "I'm not going to provide operational limits. You already demonstrated enough." "I know." He was learning. That was what frightened him. Not that humans had a strange machine. That the machine had rules. Weapons could be tricked. Secret technologies could be stolen. Superweapons could be hunted, sabotaged, or outbuilt. Rules were harder. A system that behaved predictably could become doctrine. By the midpoint of the standoff, First Spear had stopped trying to break the mesh and started trying to understand what decisions it allowed us to make. That was the moment we began to win. Not when the first signal vanished. When Goran started asking what we could choose. The damaged escort changed everything. Its designation was Spear Cinder. We had seen the maneuvering manifold running hot during the first safety sweep. Zhyr engineers had stabilized it twice. The third time, a coolant junction failed. The alert hit my panel as a hard vibration under my left hand. "Thermal rise," Talon said. "Which hold?" "Cinder fast." The bitter orange scent still lingered near the manual guard, but now I smelled hot insulation from our own control boards as the mesh increased local monitoring. Crew danger. Not yet. Their engineering team is venting the compartment. A medical band opened from the held ship. Human control, Spearcinder requests emergency route. We have propulsion coolant breach. Internal isolation is failing. Goran heard it too. His voice arrived immediately. Release Cinder. Talon looked at me. The tactical answer was no. A damaged hostile escort leaving isolation could regain fleet contact, transfer data, and give the Zhyr a live test of our route behavior under stress. We could keep it in hold and tell the crew to shut down propulsion. Safer for us. Less safe for them. I keyed the medical band. Cinder, can you cold stop the drive? Negative. Shutdown sequence is not completing. Crew count in engineering. The full engineering section. Any fire? Not yet. Goran said, Commander Beckett. I heard. You claim your system is for safety. It is. Then prove it. That was a challenge. But not the one he thought. I pressed the manual guard. The rail struck my palm so hard my wrist hurt. Hollow control to rescue 2, I said. Prepare a protected emergence lane. Cinder only, medical priority. No boarding unless requested. Keep all weapons safed. Talon turned toward me. You're opening a corridor inside the active holds. Yes. He'll see the transition. Yes. He'll learn more than we wanted. Yes. He looked at the board once, then nodded. Rescue 2 ready. Goran said, What are you doing? Returning your damaged escort to a controlled lane. Near my fleet. No. Where? Where our rescue craft can reach it. That is not what I ordered. You are not controlling this route. The words sounded harder than I intended. I softened my next sentence. Your crew needs help, we are giving it. I opened the corridor. For the first time, the mesh had to connect an occupied hostile hold to an active rescue route, while the rest of the captured formation remained isolated. The control room changed. Fans screamed. The rail vibrated so violently, I had to wrap both hands around it. The bitter orange resin smell sharpened as a second safety ampule burst in the adjacent console. Talon called numbers. Lane stable, emergence window stable, rescue 2 matching. A white marker appeared. Spearcinder emerged. Not beside first spear. Not inside human-inhabited space. It appeared in a clear rescue box well lateral to the main boundary, with engines partially disabled and weapons automatically constrained by its own safety systems. Rescue 2 was already there. A small human emergency cutter. No guns worth mentioning. It closed on the Zhyr destroyer, while the remaining visible Zhyr warships watched from outside the meridian. Goran said nothing. The Onari observer whispered. They placed it where the rescue ship was waiting. That was the strongest proof of the day. Not that we could make ships vanish. That we could decide where one came back. Rescue 2 docked. Its crew crossed only after the Zhyr captain requested assistance. Human engineers and a medic entered the damaged escort. For several minutes, the tactical board stayed almost still. The greatest fleet in the Zhyr ascendancy waited outside our border, while a civilian-derived human rescue team repaired one of its warships. Talon leaned closer to his display. Goran's targeting systems are still cold. Good. He could fire on Rescue 2. He could. You think he will? No. Why? Because then he has to believe the old model again. Talon frowned. I explained. If he fires, he has to act as if control comes from weapons, Everything he has seen says otherwise. The honorary observer must have reached a similar conclusion, because she spoke on the open channel. Admiral, recommend maintaining passive posture until recovery is complete. Goran's answer was quiet. Recommendation accepted. Another crack. The human engineers found the failed coolant junction. One of the Zhyr isolation valves had warped under a pressure transient caused before the fleet entered our space. Nothing about the mesh had caused it. They replaced the junction with an adaptable ceramic sleeve from Rescue 2's standard kit. The medic treated injured engineers for burns and heat exposure. Then our team left. No intelligence seizure. No sabotage drive. No prisoners. Rescue 2 backed away. I keyed Goran's channel. Cinder can sustain low-power maneuvering. We can return it to your formation if you maintain current weapons posture. Return it. I touched the selector. The rail pushed upward. Spear Cinder vanished from the rescue box. Moments later, it appeared outside the warning line, safely clear of First Spear's flagship. Its signal returned. Flag Cinder, emergency resolved, human personnel departed, no hostile action. Goran asked, did they access tactical systems? Negative. Did they place devices aboard? Negative according to internal sweep. Did they question your crew? Only engineering questions relevant to the failure. Goran was silent. I knew what he had expected. An empire would have taken the opportunity. Board the vessel, copy the systems, capture officers, plant surveillance, demand surrender in exchange for rescue. We did none of those things. Not because we were kind. Kindness was too soft a word for what the moment required. We did it because the system had a purpose, and we refused to corrupt that purpose simply because an enemy had handed us an advantage. That distinction reached Goran more deeply than any threat could. Commander Beckett, he said. Yes. You could have left Cinder isolated. Yes. You could have demanded terms. Yes. You could have emerged it inside a weapons envelope. Yes. Why didn't you? I looked at the route board. Most your vessels remained in hold. The rest waited outside. One repaired escort sat near the flagship. A rescue cutter was already turning home. Because your crew being in danger did not make your entry authorized. He did not answer. That is a separate question, I continued. We can enforce one without exploiting the other. The honorary observer said something in Zhyr I could not translate. Goran replied in the same language. Then the channel went quiet. Talon leaned back. That landed. I know. How? He stopped asking about the machine. Talon looked at me. He's asking about us. Exactly. The last defense of the wrong model had shifted. Goran no longer doubted that the transitier mesh could control his fleet's access. He doubted that we could keep choosing restraint if the confrontation continued. That was a more serious question. And because it was serious, I respected it. Power is easy to demonstrate once. Restraint has to survive repetition. Goran tested it. He requested the release of a carrier for crew rotation. Denied. He requested a pair of escorts be reunited in the same hold, so their engineers could compare sensor logs. Denied. He requested medical messages between every isolated ship simultaneously. Granted, but only through a safety-filtered relay. He requested permission for the flagship to cross alone, unarmed, so he could inspect the meridian. Denied while the fleet remained under unauthorized entry status. Each answer followed the same logic. Safety where possible. Access only where authorized. No humiliation. No tactical network restoration. No bargaining over lives. No hidden escalation. By then, the Zhyr officers could predict some of our answers before I gave them. That was when I knew the encounter was ending. Not because the fleet had become weaker. Because the rules had become legible. Goran finally asked the question he should have asked before he crossed. What is required for lawful military passage? I told him. Declared destination, route request, fleet mass and drive profile, weapons safed for assigned transit, agreement to human rescue and collision control authority while inside the corridor. And if we refuse, you remain outside. And if we enter anyway, I rested my palm on the rail. You know. He did. For several seconds, the greatest fleet of the Zhyr Ascendancy sat divided between visible ships outside our border and invisible ships held inside a system it had mistaken for civilian convenience. Then Goran gave an order. All first spear vessels outside the meridian adopt departure posture. Talon whispered, "There it is." I shook my head. Not yet. Goran continued. Human control, I request return of held vessels to positions beyond your warning line. We will not re-enter. Confirm weapons remain safe during restoration. Confirmed. Confirm no vessel will accelerate toward the meridian during restoration. Confirmed. I opened the release sequence. Not all at once. One ship at a time. A cruiser returned first. Then an escort. Then another carrier. Each signal reappeared outside human space, exactly where the route plan placed it. Each ship reported intact. The Zhyr formation rebuilt itself slowly, but not in the aggressive spearhead that had entered. They formed a broad waiting arc. The control room remained loud with fans and root tones. My palms ached from the rail. The bitter orange resin had dried into amber streaks beneath the guard. More ships returned. Then more. The formation steadily filled. With every restoration, the title's silence reversed without becoming a victory parade. Signals came back because we chose to return them. That detail mattered. If we had destroyed First Spear, Goran could have told himself the problem was firepower. If we had trapped it forever, he could have called the problem a prison. By returning the ships intact, we forced the harder conclusion. Humanity controlled the encounter well enough to end it cleanly. The 53rd ship emerged last. First Spear was whole again. Talon watched the board as if expecting something else. Fleet count 53. Damage. One escort repaired, no combat damage. Human casualties. None. Zhyr. The injured were treated, all stable. I nodded. Send final safety record. The packet went out. Goran opened the channel. Commander Beckett. Yes. I am transmitting my report to the Ascendancy Admiralty. That is your choice. It will state that First Spear entered human space under strategic inspection authority and lost formation integrity. I waited. It will also state, he continued, that the loss was not caused by communications attack, sensor blindness, or superior fleet mass. Talon stopped typing. Goran's voice had changed. Not humbled. Precise. It will state that human territorial control includes transit geometries our doctrine does not currently model. The honorary observer added, recommend term, consent-gated domain. Goran did not rebuke her. Instead he said, accepted for provisional classification. There it was. Not surrender. Reclassification. A new category replacing the old one. Talon looked at me. I did not smile. Not because I felt nothing, because the moment deserved accuracy more than celebration. Understood, I said. Goran was not finished. My prior assumption was that sovereignty required visible denial capability. I said nothing. I was wrong. The words were quiet. No apology ceremony. No pleading. Just a competent officer correcting a model that had failed. That was enough. I sent him the standard route request form. Talon stared at me. You're sending paperwork. He asked what lawful passage requires. He just invaded. And now he knows the form matters. A laugh escaped him before he could stop it. Goran received the packet. For the first time all day, his answer carried the faintest trace of something like dry amusement. Your species weaponizes administration. No, I said, we survived it. The line went silent. Goran returned. Until doctrine is revised, knows your military formation is to cross a human-controlled transit boundary without assigned passage. That was my second almost joke, and probably my last. First spear began to turn away. Its engines brightened in sequence. The broad waiting arc stretched into a departure column, pointed back towards your space. No human fleet arrived to escort them. No warning shots followed. No triumph broadcast crossed the meridian. The route board simply changed their status from active violation to outbound monitored traffic. Talon rubbed his eyes. Earth is asking whether we want a military commendation packet opened. No. I knew you'd say that. Ask for replacement resin ampules. He looked at the amber streaks beneath the guard. We used two. And the left rail bearing is vibrating. That is what you want in the official request. Yes. He typed. The cooling fans finally lowered their pitch. For the first time since first spear arrived, I took my hands off the rail. My palms were red. Outside the control room windows, hollow meridian looked exactly as it had before the invasion. Black space. Sparse stars. No wall. No glowing shield. No battleships. The Zhyr had mistaken absence of spectacle for absence of control. I could understand why. Humans had once made the same mistake about our own systems. We used to imagine safety as something dramatic. Armored doors, armed guards, thick walls, visible warnings. Then enough people died in ordinary accidents that we learned another kind. A marked route. A pressure limit. A brake that engaged before the driver understood the danger. A rule boring enough to be trusted. The transit-shear mesh belonged to that tradition. It had stopped a fleet for the same reason it had corrected Morning Psalm. Something entered the wrong way. The system made room for survival. Hours after first spear departed, a Zhyr signal appeared at extreme range. A single signal. Talon straightened. Contact. I put my hand back on the rail. Not because I expected another invasion. Habit. The signature approached slowly. Small hull. Courier class. Weapons profile, none. Its transponder carried a formal Zhyr military identifier and a route request header formatted according to the packet I had sent Goran. Talon read it twice. You should see this. I do. The courier opened a channel. Terran Transit Guard, this is your courier Ashen Wing, dispatched under authority of Admiral Goran Zhyr. Request assigned passage across Hollow Meridian. I looked at the route data. Declared destination. Mass. Drive state. Crew count. Weapons none. Purpose, delivery of revised navigation liaison protocols. Everything required. I approved the lane only after the system repeated the request back to us in plain language. Talon checked the mass figures against the courier's drive signature, then checked them again. No one hurried. That was another lesson the Zhyr had learned badly on their first approach. Permission was not a ceremonial word spoken after power had already decided the outcome. It was a condition, tested by machines and people before the route existed. The courier waited while we verified every field. It did not threaten, demand, or announce inherited rights. It simply held position. I could feel the mesh idling through the rail, ready to make a road and equally ready not to. When the final indicator turned steady, I realized Goran had sent us more than a message. He had sent proof that the correction had survived the distance home. Talon said, "Approve." I touched the route selector. The rail answered with a soft, steady pressure. "Your courier Ashen Wing," I said, "your route is approved. Maintain assigned vector. Do not deviate during transition." Understood. The courier reached the boundary. For a moment, its marker touched the same line, where 53 hostile signals had vanished. Then the system accepted it. The ship did not disappear from our board. It moved inward along a green authorized path. Beyond it, far outside human space, the last traces of First Spear's departure wakes were fading into the dark. Talon watched the single green signal. "That's different." "Yes." "What changed?" I looked at the route authorization glowing beside it. "Permission." The Ashen Wing crossed hollow meridian. And this time, every signal stayed on.